Welcome. You are at the CCC,
where there are no outside issues. My name is Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, a 7th-year doctoral student in clinical psych, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
Yes, and I am LouiLou, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm a former Miss Castro Country Club. I am in recovery for alcohol and crystal meth, and I am always in search of balance. Yes, and each week we will provide and create a brave space where we can engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
Our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
But before we do that, please remember to like, share, and ding that bell if you have it.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, 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 ding.
And now the disclaimer. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The material and information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have Bonnie Violet back with us.
Yes.
For... What were you going to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just said yes.
For folks at home who know Bonnie Violet used to co-host with us and is now with our production team, and she's been working on our marketing.
I love that. Our production team.
Team. And she's been behind our marketing. So if you've been noticing a bunch of stuff on YouTube or Instagram, Bonnie Violet is the mastermind.
Fun stuff.
And the clips. And yeah, she's really helped elevate the podcast.
Absolutely.
And so Bonnie Violet, you're joining us today for our conversation about body image.
So how are you doing?
Yeah, how are you doing, Bonnie Violet? It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I'm good. It was so interesting to just sit here while you do the intro and not say anything, you know. I wanted to keep jumping in.
You wanted to judge us, huh? You were judging us.
No, you've gotten a rhythm. It's great.
Well, not even a minute in, and Lewis is already trying to start a fight.
Actually, I was trying to start a fight before then, but it's like, I'm all, whatever. Yeah. Okay, it's all good.
That's true.
Bonnie, how are you liking your new place? How have things been since we've last seen you?
Yeah, I mean, things are good. I'm getting situated in Idaho. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not too much is, kind of same old.
Yeah.
Nothing too major.
Yeah.
It's really cool because I was listening this, like I do on Sundays, I was listening to an episode, and I remember you talking about in the episode, I'm just sick of moving. I just want to set down some roots. And so, so that's really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's been nice.
Yeah. Lewis, how are you?
I'm good. I'm just happy to be here. I get this 15 minutes to kind of decompress, because this week, for some reason, has not been, my dealings with people. It's like I'm having to say the serenity prayer under my breath. Yesterday, I really wanted to kind of carve out a little shiv and
not a shiv.
Oh wow!
And God, follow Lewis. People around the blind spots at the store and just kind of check.
That's so horrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the truth is the truth. Can we try to pull the table closer to us? Okay.
Do you want it to be a part of you? What's the deal?
I do need it to be a part of me. How are you doing, Anthony? Well, I'm glad you asked. I am.
Wow.
I'm doing great. This has been a pretty, I don't know if crazy week. I don't know. I've been kind of anxious, kind of in my head, really trying to turn things over, trying not to control a bunch of things.
Does it have anything to do with your upcoming anniversary?
I haven't even thought about my anniversary.
Sometimes it's like I would get early recovery. I would get really kind of squirrely around my anniversary.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's funny you should mention that, because so 5/18/18 is my sobriety day. I'll be celebrating 5 years, God willing. Let's not celebrate yet.
Well, no, but that's I know you don't get any. What do they say?
No friends.
No friends.
Yeah, no friends.
So I'll be celebrating 5 years on the 18th, God willing.
That's when they say you're head pops out of here.
So, what's crazy is that, so when I went out the last time, I was a couple days shy of 6 years.
Wow.
So things started to get a little dicey for me toward the end of the last time I was in my fifth year. But things feel very different this time around. I've talked about that a lot. My recovery is never felt the way it feels now.
Yeah, because you're like a pillar. in the community.
Chill. No one's a fucking pillar. No one's a goddamn pillar. I hate. No one's a pillar. Like all we are is just a bunch of sober people, and like some people happen to be more
or
visible.
bozos on the bus.
Just a bunch of pillars on the bus.
Just a bunch of
pillars on the bus.
A bunch of pillars on the bus.
Is that what they call people who pop pills? Pillars?
No.
Not anymore.
That's yeah. You know the other one that really makes my fucking makes me cringe when people talk about an institution. Oh, they're an institution. To refer to people. No tea, no shade. We're not here to talk.
And I always say under my breath they should be institutionalized or whatever.
So today's topic is body image issues, right? Body image issues. And that's one of those things that I don't necessarily hear people talk about in the rooms necessarily, but where I do hear it a lot is in private conversations, like with friends. And sometimes people aren't naming it that way. And so for folks at home who may not be familiar with the idea of body image issues or say like body dysmorphic disorder or dysphoria, basically what happens for some people is that there can be like a discomfort or distress or displeasure with something that the way they see their body, right? So sometimes, I think a commercial I've seen for this before is like you have someone who's staring in the mirror and they're looking at their body, but what they see is actually not what's actually there, right? So they might in their head distort like their stomach. They may think their stomach looks weird, or maybe their face looks different than the way that it actually is, but it's a type of kind of displeasure, discomfort, distress around what your body looks like, whether that be perceived or actual, right?
I agree.
So we thought about bringing this conversation up. I think, it's starting to get warm outside, the summer, spring, during times where like people are wearing a lot less clothes or fewer clothes or clothes that are like more form fitting.
Like the naked guys.
On the block.
We have some naked guys. If you're not from San Francisco, we have some naked guys who I call them naked guys because they're not nudists. They're just exhibitionists. They walk back and forth and I wish I had a fraction of the confidence they had.
Yeah. But they're not entirely naked. Technically, they have to wear socks on their private parts.
Yeah, but if the sock is not covering your junk, it doesn't really matter. And every time I look out of somehow it's like it's kismet, or it's meant to be that I'm supposed to see them naked, and I'm like, seriously, I've seen them naked more than I've seen myself naked. I'm just keeping it real.
So before we dive in, Bonnie, Violet, or Louis, was there anything else you might want to add into like giving our conversation some context or shape?
Well, we did have a conversation when we first started. When we first started the podcast, we did have this conversation, and I believe that it's a conversation that definitely could always be continued. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm glad that we're taking this opportunity to talk about it some more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the big thing we weren't necessarily. I think we're just talking about body image in general.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily have to be like good or bad. I think.
Yeah.
But it was in speaking though about body, and you talking about the like the naked men, is that there was another bodied person that we know. I'm Allie. I remember Allie one night. I was out with her, them, him. They like to use all the different pronouns, and they decided to do like the guys were doing, and so they took off everything and walked around downtown. And it was such a liberating thing. And I was with them when they also did it at Pride, which I think to me that's a positive attitude about your body, to be able to just walk around and let it all hang out, so to speak. I was definitely in awe. Absolutely. And kind of looked up to them for that.
I think the reason why there seemed like so much vitriol and whatever, I feel like what Allie was able to do is a lot different than what these individuals, because every time I look at them, I see in a lot of ways, I see privilege. And I'm like thinking, how is it that you get to walk back and forth up and down the street? It's like on my days off, I don't walk. I walk up the street once because Castro, I didn't realize until I got sober that it's an incline on both ways. Seriously? How is that possible? No.
Right. What I think is interesting just about body image issues is that there's so many different ways of having that conversation, right? There's like our own relationship to our bodies. There's a way that bodies are politicized, right? So kind of a common example of like a politicized body would be like the double standards around how much a man is able to expose of their body as opposed to, say, like a woman is able to expose of her body. Or there's also just kind of like the privileging of attractive bodies, things
absolutely.
that are considered conventionally attractive, right? There's, the other just kind of like the privileging of it. Whoa, what was that?
Sorry.
I was like, man, whose voice is that?
Body's recording us.
It was you.
Yeah, body. I know. I realized it was me. But right. So there are a bunch of different ways of having the conversation. And so for folks who are listening in, as usual, if anything comes up for you, you have any ideas you want to share, whether by yourself or just bodies in general, chime in. So I think one thing that I want to start off with is we aren't necessarily, like Bonnie Violet just said, we aren't necessarily just talking about maybe like the negative parts of body image or like, or body image. We're just talking about body image in general. Yeah. I think for me, it's really easy to kind of think about negatives around body image issues because I think part of that just is as a gay man, I think there's I'm probably not alone in this, but like as a gay man, there's certain expectations or there's a certain way that like certain bodies are privileged over other bodies. There's, a lot of folks might be familiar with like the book, The Velvet Rage, right? And in that book, they talk about, how gay men generally feel like they have to be superlative in some way in order to kind of like feel seen or like valued, et cetera.
With regard, like maybe to shape this conversation, I'd like to go back to like early recovery. Like when we all get sober, I think what we all have in common is that whatever we were doing in our body, we're shifting. Like our body's not okay with the fact that all of a sudden we're super healthy after we hadn't been healthy. And I've heard you say this before, Bonnie, especially with what you're going through. And I know that early recovery is when I gained all this weight, and mind you, it was not like that I was morbidly obese. It's that I was morbidly like underweight. And the weight that I gained was the weight that I should have had on my body. And so my body was betraying me. I didn't recognize it. I didn't know this body. And so I think that early on, if I had relapsed at all, it would have been around not being comfortable in this body that, because I was just like, none of my clothes fit. And so I felt like, I was like, oh, you are just a big banana slug and this is not healthy. And I don't know, for lack of a better term.
Banana slug.
I know.
Yeah. And I think,
Go ahead.
I think one of the experiences for me, I think much of my life, I'm just kind of reflecting about my relationship with my body over my lifetime. I'm really only in the last couple of years coming to really understand how different of a relationship I could possibly have with my body. Like when I was young, I was constantly getting corrected by my movements and my expressions. And so I became very uncomfortable in my body. Like I didn't know how to express. I didn't know how to move. A lot of the times it was because it was too soft or too feminine. And so that really created kind of like this, I don't know if neurosis, I'm not going to use that word because I don't know that it's correct, but it created this anxiety around being able to like just be in my body correctly in a way that was consumable by the environment around me. And then I just celebrated 15 years of recovery as well. And then also my HIV diagnosis, which was 24 years ago. And those are all very closely related to me. And though HIV caused me to really have a relationship with my body, I still don't think that I really lived inside my body and was super connected with my body until I started transitioning. And like, even like sexually, like I was very free with my body. And it was like, I never really had strong feelings about my body. I always just thought I was just there. But now that I'm actually like coming into my body, I just know that there's a different relationship that I'm having with my body than I had, over the years.
I hear that. And one of the things that both you and Lewis have kind of gestured toward is this idea of the body as being a place that we live in, right? And what comes up for me when I think about that is like, if there was something I wish for other people and something that I work on is like making my body a safe place to come back to. Right. And like some of that, like I used to think that in order for my body to be a safe place to go back to is like, oh, my body needs to be so sexy so that no one around me can fucking disapprove of it. And then and only then can I feel good about myself, which is what I've learned is like, that doesn't work.
No, not at all.
Like no matter how hard you chisel, no matter what you get your body to look like a sense of like self-value or self-worth can't be, for me, dependent on like what other people are seeing or naming. I'm also thinking about like the role of trauma and the way trauma shows up in bodies, right? Like I think we've talked about like The Body Keeps Score, that incredible book, right? And a way in which like, I appreciate your saying like not being in your body, right? Like for a lot of folks who've experienced trauma, the body we can feel very detached from our bodies, right? So sometimes what that might look like is like during sex, we might be disassociated. We might not be in our bodies, right?
Absolutely.
Or if we're feeling anxious, we may not be able to feel sensations, right? And so I think there's like this kind of like place that we can, I like the place that I don't hear a lot of folks having the conversation about is like, what is it like to be embodied? Like, what does it actually feel like to be, in there? Our good friend Benji he's a somatic therapist, and he talks a lot about like, how do you kind of like, where can you go to like to the origin of like, say if you're having like an anxiety or a pain, Dr. Sherry Taylor, she talks a lot about like, can you locate, where like a sensation is and getting like curious about those sensations. But I think ultimately like what we're talking about is like beginning to have a conversation about actually being inside of the body and what does that look like and what does it sound like? Because often I think, maybe just in my opinion, we're having the conversation about like the gaze from outside.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, I think most of the time, like all the issues I had around it had everything to do with external.
Right.
And it wasn't until like I started doing the work that we do in recovery.
Right.
And whatever that looks like for you. Because I had to get to the causes and the roots and all that. I had to figure out like, how is that showing up? I mean, because like you were saying, it's like I didn't realize until just now. It's like I didn't really think about my body. It just was there, And like I used to tell myself when I was in an active addiction, I was really sex positive and I was this, that, and whatever. But that's not true. I was doing all of that because I was driven by the drug, by the alcohol. It wasn't my choice. I mean, it wasn't completely my choice. I mean, it was my choice because I picked up the drug and the alcohol. But everything beyond that, it was driven, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think about things like as simple as like drinking water, right? Like sometimes I think about like the way I've treated my body. Like when I was drinking and using, like I was so bad to myself. Like I didn't get enough sleep. I didn't drink enough water. Like I would eat the most kind of like outrageous things. And I was just thinking a second ago, like if I had a child, like if I had a son, and would I feed him the way I've been feeding myself? Or would I, you know what I mean? Like, would I not monitor his like water intake the way you know what I mean? And I think that's really telling. I think it's really telling to like when you externalize like the way you treat your body from things as simple as like, how am I nourishing it? And then also I appreciate like the stuff about like sex, right? Which is like how, like, what am I doing with my body when I'm in relationship, with another person? And then the other thing that's coming up for me is like also like the power of touch, right? Which is like, that can bring up so much for people, depending on like what someone's history is with touch, whether it feels safe or not safe. Bonnie Violet, you were going to say something.
Yeah. There's just so much in listening to both of you. There was so much that I felt like I could kind of tap into, but just lastly, you were talking about touch and kind of, one of the things is I think feeling, what does it feel like to be in your body? And I know for me, I have been like, and like with transitioning, being on hormones, your skin actually changes. So literally everything you feel feels different. Your touch completely changes. And so I think that's part of a new relationship with my body that I've never had. And to be honest with you, I don't know that I just never noticed it before. And when you brought up the idea of like, one of the things that I've become aware of is now that I have a body that does not fit into many norms. Like before, I could pass as a cis man, even though I was gay, like flamboyant or whatever, at least I was still like a cis man. Now that I'm trans, I have to really, and trans in public and visibly trans, I have to be really mindful. I have to actually, maybe I need to be dehydrated for a few hours because I have nowhere that I can pee for the road trip or for the flight to the other side of the country. Or like there's a lot of things I have to be aware of. And it's really interesting how I can be more happy in my body. I can be proud of my body and what it's becoming. And yet still it could be a danger out in the world. And so it creates this weird dissonance, I think, with my relationship with my body. Because at times I find myself thinking like, oh, I wish, like, should I press my breast down more? Should I, like all those sorts of things in order to be safe or okay?
Yeah. You're making me think about, there's so much coming up now.
Yeah.
So like one of the things is like, when do we feel safe in our bodies? Right? Like what are the things that like a person needs to do, or just personally, even folks listening, at home, like when do you feel safest in your body? Is it when, you're by yourself and you're breathing and you're, like there's no physical threats. Like I can remember being like a young gay boy and fearing getting like the shit beat out of me because I was like, am I walking too gay? Is my wrist, like, you know what I mean? Like, am I not big enough? Am I not there? So there are all these different, and so I often like, like looking back, I think a lot of my drinking and using was about numbing my body, and not just because of that, but it was about not wanting to feel whatever I was feeling. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think a lot, I mean, I have a very different relationship with my body now, and I have like a sense of safety, and, I take care of myself, in a very different way. But like part of that has been like a shifting in values, right? Like part of it is like, like high blood pressure runs in my family, and so does cholesterol, so it's like, what does it look like to eat better? And like, what does it look like to, rather than like work out because you want to look a certain way, but you're working out because you want your energy levels to feel different. So I was thinking about like safety, and then like the numbing and not wanting to be in a body.
For me, this sounds cheesy, but it's like, I listen to those things to say, I needed to fall in love with me again. Mm-hmm. And one thing is like, I tried the route of like going to the gym and trying to, and mainly because of what I was getting from outside, from other people. And really no one was saying, hey, you need to do this, except for my doctor. He said, you probably could stand it. And all I heard was, you're a fat ass. But I realized that, like, and you said changing of the values. I think that's what it is. I have changed how I view me. I also realized that going like every day, all of this is brand new, because the body that I had before, like active addiction or whatever, I was a young man. I was a younger person. I'm older, and of course, I'm expected to carry a little extra, especially if I'm not doing anything to not. And then being in this environment, this not just the gay environment, but the gay neighborhood where everybody, in my opinion, probably is a lot skinnier or thinner than the normal average person. So I'm just like, Louis, what is good for you? What works for you? And you got to be okay with it, because I'm not taking any affirmative actions to make it different, and I feel good in my body today. And I realize that because I'm doing the things that I can do, like eat better, get sleep, get all the things, I'm not going above and beyond, but I am definitely focused on the basics, and I'm happy about those.
Do either one of you have like an opinion about like, I'm thinking about like body shaming and kind of the movement, there've been movements over the last few years around like body positivity, right? And one of the things that I really appreciate about that movement is this idea that regardless of what my body looks like, I can feel good about myself. Absolutely. Right? Like just across the board. And I find, I have a friend who once said to me, she's like, Anthony, I've been a big girl my whole life and I've never had an issue with my weight. People have issues with my weight. I don't have issues with my weight, right? And I feel like that's very difficult, right? Because you can get to a place where there's like self-acceptance and there's self-love, and that becomes really difficult to hold when you feel like you're getting like, competing messages from outside. So I guess, the question there is like, do either one of you have like an opinion about what does it look like to kind of like cultivate that kind of sense of peace and safety for yourself and your body?
Honey?
Not you passing the buck.
No. I wanted to make sure I didn't. Yeah. I wanted to make sure I didn't just jump in because I feel honestly, it's almost like, okay, so you know how you steer clear of social media?
Yeah, I fucking hate it.
Even if what I realize is like, even if I'm not getting these obvious messages from the people around me or whatever, it's all of the subtle messages from media, from everywhere, and I think with everything else, it's like it's a matter of constantly like checking my temperature, making sure what's up, and maybe kind of curating the types of things that I'm exposed to on a regular basis, because I'm not going to be watching.
Right.
I'm not going to be watching any bodybuilding, or I've never wanted to be about. But you know what I'm saying. I'm not going to be focusing on. Yeah, I just really have to kind of be mindful of that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and well, I feel like it's a journey as far as like our relationships with the body and the world. And I think when it becomes problematic is when we can't be anything beyond our body. It's kind of like, I think we can recognize it as like LGBTQ folks, that oftentimes people who are not LGBT, all they see us for is our sexuality, and we're never allowed to just be people. And I think that can happen the same way with different bodied people. I know that oftentimes people who identify as fat will go to medical visits and it's always about their weight and it's never about like the other stuff. I know that I've had a very poor perception of people who go to the gym. And that's just the opposite way. But again, it's me only looking at them because of their body and not allowing them to have the rest of themselves. And so I think that's part of the journey is, am I living beyond my body? Like, am I having a relationship with life and the world beyond my body? And am I able to be around people who can see beyond my body, but also recognize that my body may be a part of that experience as well?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's like, I don't know have y'all noticed? Oh, hey, Rose.
So Rose writes, agree with her. I've been big most of my life as well. Wait, sorry. I've been big for most of my life as well. It's how others view me. Yeah. Thank you for that, Rose. The other thing I feel called to here is like for folks listening in, it's like, how can we begin to make room and to help each other feel safe, in our bodies? There's this one weightlifter, this bodybuilder in South Africa. His name is Noel, and I bring him up because there's been one of the things that I appreciate about like a lot of like his media stuff is that it's about not comparing. It's about like being realistic and having a relationship with your own body and lifting each other up around like if you have fitness goals, right? And if you don't have fitness goals, like still, like not allowing, at least I do this a lot with my friends, and maybe this is like an overstepping of boundaries, but like, I don't like hearing my friends say negative shit about themselves, whether about their bodies or about like their intellect or anything like that. I don't normalize that, around myself. And it might seem like a little parental, but I just feel like words are very powerful, especially the words we use toward ourselves.
I feel like that, like, I wish I could be more like that, because it's like, I think that, yeah, it's like supporting each other in that way. I think that to me, it's healthy. It might seem parental, but like, I think that sometimes we do those things without even being fully aware. And so if I love you and I care about you and you call me on it in a loving way, I mean, that's because I'm always talking about becoming aware. Like if I'm asleep at the wheel and I don't know that it's happening, it's a gift to have somebody say, hey, do you realize that you've just been putting yourself down? I do this thing in the morning. I look at myself and I realize, again, because I'm not taking any different action, I'm all, I love you. I love this. I mean, because I'm healthy underneath, and that to me makes the most sense. Also, I've been looking really good lately.
Yeah. You had mentioned, or Anthony, you've asked a couple times.
Go ahead.
Sorry, there was a little bit of a glitch. You had asked, like, when do I feel most safe in my body, or that sort of thing. And I think for me, it's all about spiritual. Like, whenever I can spiritually feel like I'm inside my body, I think that's when I feel the safest. And one trick, I guess, one way that kind of helps me become aware of my spirit within my body is a warm beverage in a cup. For whatever reason, to touch like a warm coffee cup or a teacup or something, it really just causes me to like be in my body. And I think also when I'm usually in a space either with myself or with people that I really love, when that sort of thing is happening. So for me, I feel like that's a practice that I can do to feel safe in my body.
We have a comment.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we have a comment. Jaylon writes, at Anthony, simple answer, treat others how do you like to be treated, but that's in a perfect world. Thank you, Jaylon. You know, I'd add one angle to that, which is some people treat themselves like shit. And, you know, and like sometimes that's how they treat other people. Don't
treat me the way you treat yourself, please.
Yeah, if you're one of those people.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the one thing I feel kind of compelled to say is that, yeah, and I'll speak for myself, is that, you know, for a very long time, I thought like happiness was a destination or comfort was a destination. And I love that you bring up spirituality. I think a lot for me around happiness and around feeling good has been an inside job.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it has been about like making peace with those things about myself that, you know, I may not feel good about. You know, one of the kind of maybe best things that's ever happened to me is like if I sprain my ankle or I hurt my back. It's when I don't have the thing that I realize how I've taken something as simple as walking for granted, or I've taken being able to sit upright for granted. And so I think about, you know, I get this one precious life, this one precious body to live in, and like, how can, you know, so I've had to spend time around like figuring out what feels good, you know, and I think a big part of that is trusting how you feel, right? Like, I think sometimes we might force ourselves to like, we might gaslight ourselves and think like, oh, you know, like I'm not anxious in this situation, or no, it's like, if you're uncomfortable, you're uncomfortable. And that's a place where you can begin to start having like an honest conversation with yourself. And maybe that's something you take to prayer or to therapy. But I think getting real with like whatever it is that's coming up, you know, whether when you look at yourself or you look at another person or whatever. Do you see where I'm going?
I do. And as you had said something, get it. Like, I realized like, and this has a lot to do with recovery and the work that I've been doing. It's like, that trusting is so important, because I found like, the one thing that will cause me to turn away from someone is if you get me second guessing myself.
Oh,
you know, it's just the worst way to be. And it's like, we talked about it over the years with, friends and what have you. It's like, for me, like, I will take the temperature. I will talk to people about things or whatever. And when I make a decision, I'll try to live in that decision. But then you have someone who will, like I said, try to get, question. And I don't want to be obnoxious, but it's like, I have had to get to a place where I'm all, you know what, if you're not in my space, in my circle, if you're not that person, I'm not going to entertain. I'm not, because for me, that's the safest. And the last thing I'll say, I agree with you, Bonnie, about like, for me, like, I feel safest in my body when I'm with me, but when I'm with people that I love and they love me, like those times when I feel like I can, where I'm not worried about what they think about me, what I look like or whatever. I'm just, maybe it says, if I'm not really into you, that's when I feel like I'm the safest.
Yeah. What are you talking about? We have a comment.
Oh.
Jaylon writes, call is coming from inside the house, especially in our subculture. Classic projection. The big book says you can't transmit something you don't have.
Absolutely.
That's right.
AIDS.
Let's end everything with AIDS now. Rose writes, thank you for that, Jaylon. Rose writes, body image is a self-esteem issue that at times we shame ourselves about if we are having a bad day. Well, then we don't get a great shout out, great ourselves. We don't feel great about ourselves. And yes, spirituality plays a huge role in how we respect ourselves. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Rose.
Go
ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that was coming up for me is like, so like in relationship with other people. And, you know, there have been times in my life when other people noticed that I wasn't in my body, or that I was having a relationship with my body that maybe wasn't connected or well. And so I think there might be opportunities. And also one of the things is now with my body, I wish more people would ask me about my body, would ask me about what my experience is or my changes, which might feel countercultural and probably problematic. But I think with the right people, to me, it just helps me feel seen. It helps me also be able to talk about what's going on with me. So I think we can play an important role in people we love and their relationship with their body. I know that I haven't been able to do it on my own, and it's taken sometimes other people bringing an awareness to what might be going on for me, whether it was in sex or, you know, I remember somebody telling me, you know, your whole body is here during sex once, and really kind of bringing that awareness, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you're reminding me of like physical intimacy, right? Like that's something that can feel very threatening, or it can feel alive.
Not at all.
Or not at all.
Yeah.
Or it could feel very uplifting. Like I was not, for example, like hugging is like a relatively new thing for me. and part of that is just kind of like, you know, there's history there, but it's like, I just don't want to be that close to people. You know what I mean? And one of the things that I've learned is like, no, actually, you know what? I don't mind like a hug if it's like someone I know, right? Like if there's context for it and like there is that level of closeness, but that like, I had to learn that boundary. Like I had to learn like, no, not everyone has access to your body.
Yeah.
Right.
Were you going to say something?
No. Not everyone has access or should have access. I mean, thank God for the pandemic, because it's like there's some people that I'll never have to hug again.
Well, I think sometimes a hug could be a great way too to gauge whether or not you're in your body or not. Because there are times when you can hug people and you're like, I know where I just don't feel super connected, and I realize that I'm not even there. And there's other times that I can really feel what's happening, you know, be present to that person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even like I think about like sex like can be a dissociative thing where like you're literally out of your body, or you're using sex to be out of your body, or sex being something that can bring you into your body and connecting. And I, you know, and like, you know, I've said before,
you come to having sex.
You're fucking
That's a
garbage.
whole nother conversation.
Oh my God. I don't even know what I was going to say.
I know you know, what's interesting? It's like, I was going to talk about this before, but so I feel like we've been here, there, everywhere, because there's so many different like sub conversations to have within this conversation. I mean, I think that I'm grateful. Number one, I'm grateful that we're having this conversation, because like we talked about before, like you know how you were saying you don't hear a lot of people talking about it, and I think that there might be shame and kind of weird feelings, especially if you're someone who has the standard, like if you seem, you know, someone who has the kind of, how do you say it? They're like good looking.
Okay. Conventionally attractive or whatever. And you feel as though you want to share in a meeting about maybe some dysmorphia or whatever. And the fact that, you know, those of us around who don't feel that way and think you're a certain way may respond. Like I was talking to a customer about the theme today, and he was saying, so did you hear Megan Fox? She said something to the effect like she's never felt comfortable in her body. And to hear, and as much as I want to give her space to kind of feel that way, I'm thinking
she's amazing, she's perfect or whatever. And it's an understandable, like, I don't know. So,
well, I think that highlights what I was saying earlier, which is, you know, it is an inside job. Looks are deceiving, right? Like, it's not like, you know, like all the praise, it's kind of like with drinking and using. It's like, one is too many and 1,000 isn't enough. You know, if you don't have like an inner peace or like an inner appreciation for yourself, not all the compliments in the world are going to help. Yeah. The other thing I think about is like, and if your self-worth is hinging on your physical appearance, well, you know, we all age, our bodies change. Right. And yeah, I've actually heard that in the room, you know, like a lot of, like men are like, they're aging and they're freaking out because they're like, oh my God, you know, like I'm balding or I'm gaining weight or, and it's like, you realize, oh my God, I didn't realize how much of my value I was putting on what other people saw and what other people see, you know what I mean? Or what other people say. And it makes me think about, you know, self-esteem and how in the rooms we talk about, well, the way we develop self-esteem is by doing esteemable acts, right? I feel like that's such a good place to be, which is like, what will it take for you to feel good about yourself? And I can almost guarantee you not all the praise in the world is going to get you there, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe we normalize talk and make it okay for me to talk about right now in this moment. But I'm not comfortable with this. Because and not have there be shame around me talking openly and honestly about the things about the fact that I feel that I'm not perfect or that things aren't the way I want them to be. Because talking about it, getting to a place where I'm acknowledging it, then I can start like thinking about what it is that I need to do. And maybe it's that somebody has a feeling the same way, and then we can talk and relate, because it's kind of like what you were saying. Like, if I'm feeling some way about this body and someone says, well, yeah, you know what, that's, you know, maybe look at it a different way. Maybe, you know, maybe it's that you're not a blob. Maybe it's that, you know, you're only comparing yourself to someone who, it's a tough one.
Go ahead, Bonnie Belly.
I feel like we might not talk about body and image and all that stuff a lot, but it is constantly at play. And I think it's constantly at play in recovery.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know that I've experienced it just in my transition as far as like who talks to me and who doesn't, but you can see it. It's very palpable when you can see that certain people are objectified. And in some ways they get more attention or they get invited to more fellowship or than maybe the person who isn't. And so then in that vein, we all kind of get robbed, because then these people continue to get objectified as they do everywhere else in the world. And then you have folks who continue to go unnoticed or don't begin to have a good experience. And that's just say like, and that's one thing that's great about the program, is that it does create an opportunity for that not to be the culture, for that not to be how things work. And there's oftentimes when, you know, it's not an issue, but you can sometimes see that play out in some.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, absolutely. I mean, lookism is a real thing. Like, for folks who may not be familiar with that term, lookism refers to the discriminating of people who you don't think are attractive. Right? Like we sometimes hear about people being offered jobs because of what they look like, right? Or we see like people being treated better because of what they look like. It's a form of lookism, right? And I would be remiss not to acknowledge, for example, that we are a visual culture, right? Exactly. There's nothing wrong with finding someone attractive. But I think yeah, can Bonnie, not Bonnie Valley, can Brandon not hear us? Can y'all not hear us? Oh, I don't know. I'll keep talking just in case. So there is.
I think we can hear you. We just can't see.
Oh,
you.
Okay. So, so I think where I'm wanting to kind of land with this is, since we only have so many more minutes while we're live, is there are three things that come up for me. It's like, you know, for folks listening in, you know, if you're my friend and you're sitting across from me and you were dealing with, say, some body image stuff, my first question to you would be like, what do you need? You know, like, what is it that you need to feel good in your body? And that question I ask, that, like, not what will other people see? It's like, what do you need? Do you need to feel safe in your body? That's the first one. And, you know, and like, how can you start to develop gratitude for what you have? And then lastly, you know, I think about when like with pursuing anything, happiness is an exercise. Like we have to, in my opinion, we have to pursue and we have to work toward doing things that bring us joy. Joy is not just something that kind of pops up. You know, in the same way that we can meditate over problems and issues and things that make us depressed, we can also begin to do the same work to kind of cultivate comfort and peace of mind. You were going to say something.
No, I wasn't. I was letting you wrap up so that we can.
Yeah. So let's start closing off before we continue talking offline. Well, off the air.
So the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBT recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support.
Bonnie Val, you want to take that one?
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Absolutely. And tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we go live in our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels every time we go live in our studio.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're just listening to us for the first time, once the camera stops rolling, we continue talking and that content gets uploaded to podcasts.
And thanks so much for having me back on the show.
Yeah, Bonnie Violet,
Absolutely.
It's so nice to have you.
Aren't you again next week?
Yeah, aren't you?
I'm going to be back on the 20th of June, and I'll be in person when we talk about allyship just before Pride.
Love that.
Lovely. Okay.
So nice to see you, Bonnie Violet.
Wonderful.
Nice to be seen.
Yeah, and as usual, we love you, everyone. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Bye.
Okay.
Am I still in part of the after talk, or do we need to-
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Wow. Okay.
Yay.
So
What?
there was there was so much in that. You know?
That was unexpected. I was not
Yeah.
expecting. I'm like my brain is literally, there's so much coming up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I feel like maybe this is the skill that you have. It's like I feel like we should have that conversation again, or we could have the conversation again, but we section it off like this part, and we because it's there's so much to talk about in there that we almost need to kind of shape it so that we take the listener on a journey.
Well, I think part of it is we talked about embodiment, which is related to the body, but then like body image might be more about an aesthetic. And so I think there are lots of ways we could probably cut it up to go a little bit deeper. And I think, there's also like disordered eating and exercise and things like that can also be like a whole nother layer of conversation.
Yeah. And there's also, I love like the mentioning of God and spirituality.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I didn't mention is years ago, my sponsor, we were talking about like physical fitness, and she had suggested that rather than see physical fitness as like a way of shaping my body or doing all these other things, but as a way of being of service, like to be in a healthy body so that I can show up for other people. Yeah. Which is a different way of looking. Hold on. Brandon just came over and because it was making noises. Oh, we fucked up, Brandon, huh? Okay, he said we did it. But yeah, like just like having new stories or like a new narrative around like looking at my body or seeing my body or using my body. You're gonna say something, Louis?
No. I was just listening.
Yeah, my body lies over the ocean. My body lies over the sea.
But yeah, there's so many different things. There's the disordered eating, like you just mentioned, the spirituality, being embodied, like they're even like experiencing what does trauma feel like in the body, even if we're not calling it trauma, you know, like
and there's physical illness as well,
Yes.
ability. Yeah, there's physical illness, ability, chronic pain.
I mean, why didn't we cover all that? Like, I mean, we had 45 minutes.
And I also I'm like, and it's I think what was interesting to me is I started to feel like my anxiety pick up, and I'm like, I wonder what that's about. And I think part of it is like, this is like shit that I haven't talked about openly, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah,
it
exactly.
you feel transported back in time and thinking, like when we were talking about safety.
Yeah, it's fair to say when I'm uncomfortable, I crack more jokes.
Yeah. I do the
I
same
was a
thing.
regular comedian. I did a whole set.
Well, I think it was good too. Like, I felt like that we were able to just kind of talk about things without having to go too into, you need to do this or not do that or speak, which sometimes I feel often ill-equipped to have conversations about some of this stuff, because it does, like, some of the recovery is more body centered, or, and so sometimes I feel like I don't have the words, or I'm afraid I'm going to say it in a way that's, either not correct or harmful, maybe even. And so I felt good about today, about being able to just kind of speak from my experience, and hope, even though there was a part of me that wanted to be more like, I don't know, have the right answers and the right thing to say. But, I think at the end of the day, it's really just about us sharing what our experience is in this moment with the topic.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm encouraged because I believe, and we talked about this before, I believe that a great start for any of this is that you be willing to have a conversation, even if you don't think you're going to say the right things, even if you don't think, because it's like, again, we talk about it, and if we misstep, we get to acknowledge that we've misstepped. Actually, Bonnie, I think we had a moment last week where I self corrected the way we had talked about. I don't remember
What are you talking about?
I don't remember exactly what the situation was, but I was commenting on something because we've had conversation out. When I mentioned being a Virgo whatever, and we can start a conversation right now.
Oh yeah.
Stop it, and then like 3 weeks later pick it up, and I have to remember that, like, as much as I want to thinking that we're finishing the conversation as just us. We have an audience, and we have other people who are participating in the conversation. And I think that, it just makes sense to kind of, number one, give Anthony an opportunity to talk, because I just love hearing your voice.
Get out of my face.
No.
There was one other thing before you became rude or whatever. But there was one other thing I wanted to say. I remember years. I think I just accidentally
Well, this is exactly why we can't have anything
This-
nice.
We can't have anything nice because I
Just lost your head. How's your head, Anthony?
I don't know. So, geez. Okay, I'll just hold it. Sorry, Brandon. So I was. This feels so silly. People can't see, but what ended up happening is I accidentally unscrewed the microphone from the stand, and so now I have to hold
he was
it
fidgeting.
because
It's like,
I was
I'm
fidgeting.
like,
I should have a
whoa.
fidget spinner or something.
The table's going to fall apart next.
So I remember when I was, I think I was a teenager, and I remember coming across this quote, and it was basically about, it was like something along the lines of like someone is truly empowered when they can be in their strength and not feel like they have to take strength away from other people, right? Like when you can feel okay and you can be right in the world, and that is not coming at the expense of other people. And I think that relates to it can relate to almost anything, including your body, right? Like, can you be in your body and feel good about your body and that not have to come at the expense or the expense of other people, or come because of other people, Yeah.
Well, and the other side of that is not having to try to change yourself for the comfort of others. I was watching Queer Eye last night. The new season is out, and there was a person who it basically ended up talking a lot about internalized homophobia and how that played into her ability of like feeling like she had to change or had to not show pictures of her girlfriend and things like that, and how like much of a role that played. So I think internalized, that's a whole nother conversation of how like internalized homophobia and transphobia and those sorts of things impact, because and really what does it come down to? How can we express ourselves, or how can we be good in our body in a way that is truly harmful to somebody else? Yeah. I'm sure there's a way, but like for the most part, we should be able to do the damn thing, and who cares if somebody else is uncomfortable?
Well, that ties to the thing I was thinking about too. I didn't really know how to fit it in. I have been able to own the growth that I have witnessed within me. Like I may not be where I think I need to be, but I get to look back and see, because I had someone saying, well, you seem so kind of comfortable and confident. Or I realized that, I'm definitely a lot more comfortable in my skin today than I have been. There have been times where I would literally make myself smaller to accommodate other people. And I realized that, and drags helped.
Oh, I heard drag can have that like
really
effect
helped.
on people, that it can really
Totally.
Yeah, I think like internalized homophobia, like I can remember when like just being like a young gay boy and like working very hard to change my mannerisms, or working very hard to make sure that like my voice didn't sound a certain way, or like and sometimes feeling like it's like a type of code switching, right? And like one of the things that that's it's taken me a long time to do is like, how can I just fucking be comfortable being whatever, like, and with whatever that comes up, you know what I mean? That by itself, right, that's itself. It's a completely different conversation, gender performance, or like, I guess it would be like gender performance.
Yeah.
Which is also,
I was
go ahead.
Excited to have, like getting involved here. I'm starting to make connections. And so like, I recently got connected with someone who's in a small town here in Idaho who is beginning their trans experience. Come to find out, they're also recovery. And so they were actually on the podcast in the comments today.
No way.
Very nice.
Yeah, which was really cool. They didn't say anything, but they were, I know they were watching because, and we're meeting actually here in about an hour or so after I go to my regular meeting.
That's so
to kind of connect for the first time. So our stuff is going beyond, like I know sometimes we want to know that it's going beyond just San Francisco, and it is.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I was looking at some of the kind of like analytics that pop up for us. And yeah, we've had like a crazy reach, like all over the country. There's like there's international listenership. I had an experience again, like the other day, I think I text Lewis about this, where I walked into this grocery store that's down the block from my place, and someone, very long story short, they were like, hey, you're that guy from the podcast. And I felt very touched by that, because they were a queer man of color, and they discreetly were explaining to me that they like were acknowledging they have like an issue drinking and using drugs. And like, that's so crazy, because I never thought like, people who are like in active addiction might be like listening. But yeah, I mean, I just really appreciate, I don't know. I feel like there's something magical that we're doing.
If it's not working for anybody, if it's not working for anybody else, it's definitely working for us.
Yeah, like that's real.
Excited.
Like this 100% feels like therapy to me. Like I know y'all are listening, but really it just feels like y'all are listening to like a therapy session that I'm having with my, like I always leave here feeling a little bit better. You know what I mean? The only bad part that's come from this is like, I've had actually people in conversation be like, yeah, but I heard you say on the podcast, blah, 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 blah. And that's blah, 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 blah.
Hey, it was for entertainment. Yeah. Get out of my business.
So yeah, those kind of comments make great clips. So,
we only have a couple minutes left, and Brandon's already thrown up the fingers. Brandon's like,
the fingers.
Wrap it up.
Fingers, guys, wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
The fingers are.
I know.
Well, no one can see us, but
Bonnie Violet, we love you.
Yeah, Bonnie Violet, we love you. It's so good to see you and to get to chat with you again.
Thank you for elevating us. It's like all the things.
Someone hit me up recently. Was like, "Whoa, y'all marketing is like so good." I was like, I have nothing to do with that. That is 100% Bonnie Violet.
Well, I have to say though, it's a combination. I do feel like everyone's kind of doing a little bit more, which feels a little, it feels good to see that there's a lot of different movement happening in different places. So
yeah, and our production team is growing. It's so nice to see you guys here.
Yes, exactly.
All right, I think that's it. Thanks for listening. Right. Good to see you.
Oh, right on.
Are we doing this? Are you going to hit the button, Brandon? Do it.